the interface. And so the company that I'm in the process of doing a soft launch for is called Regal.ia, and the tagline is develop smarter. So the point of this company is to basically balance out financial returns with social responsibility. And I'm gonna skip some stuff because I realize I doubled some things. But what makes this platform unique is that it takes a bunch of data points and creates development scenarios, and then it visualizes those scenarios so that the interface is very intuitive and easy to use for any stakeholder in the development process. And then on the flip side of that, there's the data point, but then there's the stakeholder engagement mechanism, which is another kind of key piece of the platform. And so essentially what this is supposed to do is get all of the stakeholders together and create feedback loops and communication channels between the various stakeholders. And then of course, education is the cornerstone of this. So throughout the development process, there are specific design strategies or climate mitigation strategies, or just different types of strategies that Regal.ia is going to create case studies and write-ups about to kind of inform people about some best practices. And so this is a little bit about where I am in the business. So I have a company called Mecca LLC, and it's formed in Delaware right now. So I want to create Regal.ia as a subsidiary of Mecca, and it will be a New York company. And so the first quarter of this year, I'm just going to be kind of launching this at different events, talking to people who are stakeholders of this to just get the word out there. And then by second quarter, I want to be in a position to attract funding for this. And then the third quarter, I already have like a very robust kind of idea of who I need on my team. And so I want to start to hire out folks. And then by fourth quarter, I want to start to make sure that I'm securing contracts and creating like a business. So my growth strategy is pretty simple. Customer acquisition is what I'm going to primarily be focused on this year, just getting people engaged with the platform, testing it out, to make sure it actually kind of executes what it's supposed to, and starting to build that representation up, and then basically kind of continuously following up to get feedback on how to enhance the platform. And then creating the educational content. This is going to entail, you know, doing the blog posts, doing the articles and news and insights, but then also going to engage in speaking conferences, vendors, trade shows, panels, things of that nature. And then the end goal of this is to really utilize the strategies that come out of Regal.ia, which is this platform that I'm building, and start to test these out with real development projects. So just to give a little bit about Mecca, as a holding company, the idea that I have, the vision is right now working at the intersection of design, development, and technology. And so Regal.ia is the technology arm of that. But I also want to take these strategies and start to actually invest and develop communities. So my target customer right now that I'm focusing on is developers, people who are investing in neighborhood development, and then community development corporations. And so the goal of this is to kind of work at the intersection or work as a liaison between these two stakeholders. And of course, city agencies are there because they provide a lot of the data and they create the regulations around what can be developed, but focusing on these two stakeholders to create specific tool sets or resources that they might need is what is the kind of primary focus right now. And so this is my team so far. It's me, of course. And then my brother has been very, very helpful and just kind of keeping me accountable and helping me kind of bounce ideas off of him. But I've also been working with a woman called, named Martinique. She's a real estate agent based in California. I've been actually working with her for the past 2 years before I created the company. And she's just been kind of giving me insights. And then of course, Arija, I can't like not put you in here because a lot of the work that I've done in your field school influenced all of the work that I'm doing now. So I have to kind of acknowledge that. And so the business model is pretty simple. I have 3 tiers right now of how I'm going to make money in the business. So subscriptions, again, going back to the stakeholders that I'm going to be engaging with, they subscribe to this platform and then they have access to the tools, to the data development scenarios, but most importantly to each other. And it also highlights these businesses. So this idea is kind of based on my capstone where I was working with the Community Development Corporation, and they wanted to basically create a way to attract investors to partner with them, but by highlighting the work and the impact that they have. And so using that same kind of ideology, I'm going to create kind of like a stakeholder highlight program where you get to see who's doing what. You can use this information as vendors so that when you get a project that you want to do, you know exactly who you can talk to and partner with to execute the project. And then a lot of the methods that I'm creating to build this database or this platform is going to be licensed to other companies that are doing similar work. And then outside of that, consulting is going to be a mechanism to gain some revenue. So if people want more personalized experiences with this platform, more one-on-one coaching, luckily I have design skills and data skills and all of these skills. And the team that I start to build out will also be able to do these things. So you get more personalized kind of development strategies. And so the key features of the platform is essentially looking at adaptive reuse and the expertise that I have from like just years of experience and research around this area, but also taking all of these complex data points and visualizing them, which is something that a lot of the competitors that I've been looking at don't do. They have a lot of spreadsheets, but they didn't create the front end of their platform to be user friendly. So then holistic planning is, I think, another skill set that I have because of my background in urban planning and all of my diverse interests. I'm able to look at a larger picture or scale of a development, and I can inform a lot of different types of strategies. So all of this is driven by data. And when I say data, I mean technical data, but I also mean qualitative data coming from conversations. And so that leads to stakeholder collaboration. The community development corporations are very important because they create reports and strategic plans. And in those plans, they're advocating for the neighbors, the businesses, the people in that area. And so that's going to be baked into the data as well. And then, of course, the resource hub, making sure that people have information about what's going on, trends, stuff like that. So how this works, I'm going to get into this a lot more in the second presentation that I show, but essentially I'm identifying funding and financing opportunities. I'm analyzing demographic data as it relates to who's in specific neighborhoods, what they kind of spend money on, what they kind of like to do, and what the health equity or health situation is in those areas. And then I'm merging that with climate trajectories, trends, resilience needs, and looking at policies that can align to either there are particular policies that are advancing climate resilience standards, or there is a lack of policy around this and it needs to be more that's created. And then gathering community insights from the community development corporations and taking all of these things and creating development scenarios. Okay, I'm gonna switch to the next presentation. So that's just a little bit about kind of like where my head is at. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna lie, I might have to get a computer soon. Holding on. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, so this is my second presentation for the actual demo. Again, so Regal.ia. Yeah, so in this demo, I'm going to basically kind of talk about Regal.ia as a digital platform, how it works, the data sources that I'm going to be using and how it integrates into like the entire mechanism. And then the value chain analysis is very important. And then I'll talk about what I expect for the interface and then next steps. So Regal.ia is an investment tool that provides stakeholders in the development process with strategic insights on what to develop, where to do it, and how. It equips builders with financial, climate, community, and policy insights, and it leverages cutting-edge technology, real estate expertise, and community insights to address the critical gaps in housing accessibility and neighborhood planning. So my mission for Regal.ia is essentially to optimize development processes, engage stakeholders more effectively, and generate wealth through design in each phase of the development process. And so right now I'm focusing on two main components of the platform, which is stakeholder engagement and scenario planning. I already kind of talked about how those are supposed to work. So I'll just And then these are the initial data sources that I'm looking to start off with. And then over time, I'll start to kind of refine, enhance, or do whatever I need to do. but essentially I'm looking at policy, economic, demographic, environmental, and community data, and that is as it relates to zoning and land use and how that impacts taxes. And then that leads to funding and financing and investing also, like looking at different um, development models like community land trust, rent control, Airbnb, all of these different economic models for development and how they can be leveraged to kind of enhance the way that we build and live. And then neighborhood change, looking at trajectories of neighborhoods to see kind of how it's been changing, if there are opportunities that have been missed because of a lack of funding allocation to certain things. But then also, of course, taking in climate and sustainability data and looking at how that's going to influence what needs to be developed. And then the advocacy reports. So taking all of those different data sources and looking at them through the lens of the value chain. So this value chain was inspired by Fatou Dai, she was a professor that I love so much at Columbia because she was just very smart. And so she had us look at every phase in the development process and look at the missed opportunities and how money is usually only made at the beginning and the end of the process. And so our job was essentially to figure out ways to create more generation of income in each phase of the process. And of course, I loved that task. So land, infrastructure, regulations, design, construction, offtake, and maintenance. There are certain issues associated with each of these phases. And so what Regalia is going to do is going to look at each of these phases separately, looking at land acquisition and how much that costs, and then thinking about each of the stakeholders that are involved in this process and what leverage they have. So typically, you will see that developers have a lot of leverage because they're actually financing the project, and governmental agencies have a lot of leverage because they're creating the regulations around the project. Community development corporations have leverage in terms of advocacy, but that doesn't always get translated into the output. And so there are ways that you can kind of move money around so that people have a more balanced approach to development. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is a database that I've been developing for a while, and it just takes a bunch of a bunch of case studies from around the world and looks at who are the stakeholders, how did they fund this project, how long did it take, what is the status of the project, what were the constraints that they had to deal with, how did they mitigate those restraints through either finding other partnerships to kind of execute the project, or what did that look like, and starting to kind of list all of these out. And this will also be kind of some of the educational components of the platform. So just to give like an idea of what the interface is supposed to look like, essentially it starts by optimizing locations using geographic information systems to kind of say, this is an ideal place in the world to do this type of development. And then looking at what that development is, like how do you allocate space to do mixed use housing or mixed use residential, commercial, retail, whatever it is, like what does that mix of development look like to maximize access to funding and opportunity? And then of course, all of this data needs to be filtered through the lens of climate and resilience. And so once that's done, that's going to influence material technology, that's going to influence a lot of other things, but it's going to give the stakeholders different types of roles in the development process because people can kind of handle different things. And so it's going to influence who does what, how they do it, how they access funding and financing for it, and what that output is supposed to be. And so essentially I've also been starting to create databases about, what funding opportunities exist in the world, what those funding sources can be used for as it relates to the value chain. Can it be used for infrastructure? Can it be used for facilities? Like, how do we have to organize the sites to access the most amount of opportunity and potential for funding and return on investment? And then finally, it takes all of that information, and it won't look like this, but I had to get some in here. And visualizes those scenarios. So this is going to be a very important component of the process. But I think that this is a great idea because it engages so many different industries. And so if I'm thinking about how this can expand and how many jobs it can create, how many neighborhoods and communities it can kind of foster more community efficacy or resilience around, I think that is a great thing to invest in. And I also think that it is going to be a catalyst for other companies that are starting to leverage AI integration into their platforms because it's not ignoring the qualitative or humanistic aspect of what you need to develop. You can have the smart strategies, but people actually have to live in these spaces. So I think that having both of those at equal weight is very important to create that balance. And then, I think that I already talked about some of the ways that I think that this is a beneficial business, but I think finding sufficient financing and returns is something that developers are actually are going to be incentivized for or to or whatever, you know what I mean. And then effective collaboration, just like kind of leading the way on different ways that people can engage with one another to have more impact and waste less time. The next steps for me is to build out my team, get some contracts, and get to work. Yeah, thank you. And right now, I'm developing my own chat agents as employees because it costs less. But but it's a very interesting process to do that because outside of like chat bots, which you kind of program, you can kind of have communication with. Chat agents actually are able to take like a script or a program or something you tell it to do, and it can think for itself, which is a little scary. I'm in the process of talking to lawyers about what that means when I try to trademark or copyright or do certain things. But right now, something that I'm exploring has been fun. So I will stop sharing and thank you.
Wonderful, Tiana.
Thank you. I tried.
Wow. Yeah, just wow. Um,
Thanks.
what I think another if you have another event and you can take us through an example,
Yeah, yeah,
that'll help like people like me to like visualize what you're saying because
yeah,
you're saying a lot, right?
yeah. I do have a case study, and I was like, I should do a case study as like the interface, but I
Yeah.
said, but it's today, so yeah. But I
That's why we
will
do soft launches.
exactly. I
Yeah.
learned so much there.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if you is this only for New York or can you do it in Chicago or Milwaukee and all these places?
So I think that New York is a great starting place because they have so much data already available
Yeah.
and so many like there's so many stakeholders here. But of course, I'm looking at New York and Wisconsin, like Milwaukee in particular, just because I have a lot of knowledge about the market in Milwaukee and because it's so many vacant spaces there. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of policies that are being changed to kind of prevent landlords from being absentee and stuff like that. Like I've been reading some things about changes in Milwaukee, and I'm very interested in the difference between adaptive reuse in terms of taking underutilized land and space or vacant or underutilized properties and adapting them versus taking commercial office
Yeah.
buildings or hotels or schools or warehouses and adapting them. So I think that they present different market opportunities that are both very important. So I want to start off with those two spaces.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see, and I know that this will probably come when you integrate like the case studies and stuff, like how, um, like you're integrating like these reports and like some of like the qualitative data that comes with them about like the demographics and the things that they're trying to serve and like how that ties into like the more qualitative data that you probably already have
Yeah,
about that. So because I really feel like that thing is like the thing that like really like will get things going. So I'm excited like in the next iteration to see how it all folds in.
yeah,
Because I feel like that's really, I mean, I feel like it's really complicated
Yeah.
to make that mix happen
yeah, it is.
effectively.
Because
Um
Yeah.
no, no,
right,
that's all.
oh, right now, I mean, I'm gonna share something else with y'all because it's not some of y'all. I mean, not say it like that, but like I trust you guys. So I've started to kind of this is what I would have been willing to share with people. But so I have like I'll just show you this. I have like these case studies that I'm starting to look at. It's one that is not on here, but Basically, yes, I have the data for it. I have like different articles that have been written about it. But what I've
Mhm.
been doing is looking through kind of publications for these things and like anything that I can find online about interviews or whatever, and starting to look at how that how what people are saying or the ratings that people are giving these spaces align with the policies that exist or the funding opportunities that are tailored to certain things. Like if everybody is saying, "Oh, we want a bowling alley," but all of the money is tailored to um, this that example, but schools, then that's a misallocation of funds. And so I've been doing that kind of manually just to get the methodology baked in, and then I'm going to figure out what that looks like with the platform. And so one of the things that I asked in the earlier call was that I think right now I'm really looking for a technical co-founder because me trying to figure out how to build this interface on my website has been very complicated. And I think my skill sets need to be more towards what you just said, Kelsey, which is looking at how do you actually integrate these things in a way that's seamless and makes sense. And you can kind of create a framework that you can perpetuate. I think that that is, yeah, I've been focused a lot on like the technical aspects and I have to teach myself those things sometimes where I can just,
Yeah.
I need to hire somebody or a partner.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
Okay.
oh, one more thing before y'all go. Because so a lot of I've also been looking at accelerator programs and um a lot of them ask about traction. And so one of the ways that I'm showing traction is through these events, but also like through insights that people give. So so I'm gonna share this. Oh my, I'm becoming the type of person I can only do one thing at a time. It's happening.
Welcome to my world.
I don't like it. So this survey is gonna do for today, but I have to update it because I didn't ask for names. But it's okay, it can be anonymous for right now because I still have some work to do. Um, but the survey is just kind of like general feedback, very generic kind of information. But if you have resources or links that you want to share, this is like also a space that can happen. Um, and as I have more events, I'm talking to folks about kind of creating a community of founders and entrepreneurs, or just actually doing what I say I want to do with the platform and getting different stakeholders together in the same space to communicate with one another and kind of get to know each other's fields. So this is helping me to understand who I'm actually attracting to these events and what their industry is and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But
So is this connect? Is it is the base GIS? Is that how it works?
it started off with GIS, but as you know, my ideas like to flourish. So it started off with GIS just because that was a skill that I was starting to like develop. And then
Yeah.
when I did my capstone and I started to look at other case studies or companies that were highlighting community development corporations, for instance, I started to think about other skill sets that I need. And I was also working on a project for AI where I was able to test
Mm.
out different products. So in that like process, I'm just interested, like I can build my own AI. And that's how it kind of like grew because I'm looking at some of the things that I do manually and I'm
Yeah.
understanding that there is an app for that.
Yeah.
And so just kind of for me, I understand that I have access to information and data that a lot of people don't. And
Yeah.
because I care about kind of making sure that people benefit from what I do in a way that's healthy and like empowering, I want to take data skills and continue to grow them, but also kind of create a digest mechanism so that it's easy for other people to access them and maybe hopefully get interested as well.
That's awesome. I was just having a conversation with a guy at Mead and Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cultural resource management company, and he was saying like they're really interested in how to use AI. And a lot of times people simply use AI as like a tool, not the intelligence part. They just use
Right.
it as, you know, and this is the intelligent part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just like, this is so incredibly exciting.
Thanks. I think so too. I'm trying to like just take it one step at a time. And just focus on what it takes to actually
Yeah.
build it out. And trying to get connected to the right people who can kind of help me be pushed forward. But yeah, it's exciting. It's also kind of like I don't know how I've never done this before, and I don't know anybody who thinks in this way. So it's kind of like okay, I have to really just get this started and see where it goes.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
Taylor's
wonder
calling
if
me.
it, sorry, go ahead.
No, somebody's calling me. What were you saying?
Kelsey, go ahead.
Oh, no. I wasn't saying anything. You can go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that maybe what I didn't get from you, I kind of know you're doing that, is what are the steps? Because you can't do all this in one
Yeah,
go. So maybe the
yeah,
first step is to do something that is a proof of concept, right? So
yeah.
people agree, and then you get more money because the money part is going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel like this is so real that it might work. I mean, you just have to do it a little bit at a time,
Yeah, I was
right?
telling you brought up a point that somebody else brought up in the last call about, yeah, what does the phasing of this look like? And
Yeah.
based on my interviews from my capstone, essentially, a lot of the people who worked in financing, that financing aspect of development, they all said the same thing, which is there is a big issue with accessing capital for land acquisition. And so
Hmm.
that's a pain point for a lot of people. So that's most likely where I'm going to start. Because if that's the hardest part of the process, but that's the first part of the process, then figuring out mechanisms to streamline that is going to allow me to like kind of become a leader in this sector. So I think
Yeah.
that's where I'm gonna
Good idea.
first. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anything else?
Wow, I'm just like stunned.
Thank you.